Let's talk about the most pressing news in the college football world. That is the 2024 SEC schedule dropped last night. Really quickly, shout out to the SEC with how they released this thing. Usually the conference schedule will drop for whatever conference, and it'll kind of come out on Twitter, or you'll see a press release like, credit to the SEC for doing a chess move here and saying, we know we got your attention. We know you want to hear what we're going to do here in 2024 with OU and Texas joining us, and made probably a lot of money out of it. Now, you and I both, won't see any of that money, but it kind of felt like an event. Like I felt like I should have had College Game Day in the morning and then that event at night in prime time. So shout out to the SEC for that. But before we get into this schedule, there's three things we need to preface this with. And the first of which being, this is not the permanent model. The SEC was under a lot of heat for going with an 8-game conference schedule in 2024. And the way that I'm reading this, they're saying, hey, there's two things that are coming into play here if we go to a 9-game conference model, like a lot of y'all want us to. You want us to go to 9 conference games? Well, you better find a way to pay us for that 9th conference game. So that's a chess move. Credit to them. The other piece of this is they're going to see how the college football playoff treats strength of record. It's no secret now, the SEC, especially adding Texas and OU, it is going to be an absolute Hunger Games of what we have come to know throughout the college football landscape. Like, it is going to be earn your check every single week in the SEC, as it always was before. But they want to see, okay, do you treat a 2-loss team in the SEC differently than maybe a 2-loss team in the Big Ten? Or let's take it a step further, a 3-loss team in the SEC. Are we still getting in the dance? Because if we're not, then we're going to go ahead and schedule FCS Northwest and be just fine doing that and take ourselves to the college football playoff. So expanding to 12 in 2024 when this schedule will become a reality, but just making sure we're on the same page. This is not a permanent model. Like I just said a second ago, it is divisionless. There is no more split down the middle in the SEC. It is, we take the top 2 teams, y'all have it out in Atlanta at the end of the year, and that's going to be how we decide a champion. It's not going to be win the SEC West and you play for it. Like, no more of that. So making sure we're on the same page here, you could see a rematch. Like, we could see the Iron Bowl on the last week of the regular season, then they take that show to Atlanta and play it again. If Auburn were to hold up there into the bargain and Alabama comes back to being what we know Alabama to be. So making sure we're on the same page there. And also, we've kind of wrapped this all into one. But the third point is the college football playoff is expanding. And that's a very big part of if they do go to that 9th conference game. All right. So I think the thing that we got to talk about first is the newcomers, right? Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC. And for Texas, let's take a look at what they drew for the 2024 slate. And they got Florida at home. They got Georgia at home. They got Kentucky and Mississippi State all at home. Arkansas, Texas A&M, Vandy on the road, and then obviously Oklahoma will be a neutral site game. So the thing that's not listed on this schedule, in SEC play at least, is Texas actually in 2024 will also go to Ann Arbor, Michigan and play Jim Harbaugh and company. So there was a lot of people that I saw talking about, well, Texas got off easy with the schedule and then Oklahoma's is much tougher. Right now, that might be how it looks. But Texas, if they are to make the college football playoff in 2024, they will have to go through Michigan. They'll have to play a Georgia. Like, I promise you, the deck is still pretty stacked if you're a Texas fan as well. Now, for Oklahoma, let's take a look at what they got. They got Bama at home. They got Tennessee. They got South Carolina at home. And then they go to Auburn, to LSU, to Ole Miss, to Missouri. So 4 games on the road in the SEC. And I want to kind of address what I just talked about a second ago. There's a lot of people that are saying, man, look at the cards that Oklahoma drew compared to Texas. Man, Oklahoma's schedule is so much tougher. And yes, today that might kind of be how it looks if you're just looking at the SEC slate. But we have to keep in mind here, this is still a year away. Like, we're still going to have a whole 2023 season we're going to play, a whole bunch more data we're going to get before we have a proper view of how difficult this slate is going to be. To put it in context, this time last year, we all thought Texas A&M was a dark horse college football playoff team. They missed a bowl game in 22. Like, we view A&M much differently right now than we did a season ago. And I'm just saying the same could be true for some of these opponents that Texas and Oklahoma drew. Like, we don't know what Florida's going to be in a year. Right now, people have their own opinion, Billy Napier. What if Florida goes off and rattles off 9 wins? What happens if that happens? And we're looking at Florida much differently on Texas's schedule. What if Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, what if they punch a ticket to the playoff? These are big what ifs. These aren't predictions, but I'm just saying we have to sort of hold our judgment on what this 2024 slate is going to look like because we have no idea what's about to happen in 2023. Everybody wants to speak in absolutes and college football teams are this and that. It's like this is 2 years away. We got a whole season to get through. And then this time next year, we'll talk about what this is going to look like for these teams. So if you feel slighted as a Texas or an OU fan or anybody else in the SEC, just understand now there is a lot more that's going to go into this before we get a proper gauge for the difficulty ahead for these schools. So really quickly, make sure you're subscribed. We've got a lot of y'all that are new to the show. We're glad to have you here. Go ahead and like the video. We got that little streak going on right now of over 100 likes before we get off air. Little thumbs up icon before we get out of here. Appreciate you for that. And again, we talk ball every single day. Every single day we're talking college football. We're live twice a week, but we'd love to have you a part of this operation. We're also on podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get them. You can find us if you just type in the hard count. All right, so thank you in advance for that. So some other notes. I think when you look across the board here, and again, we're still a year away from this being a reality, you look across the board, I feel like it was pretty fair. Like I feel like the majority of the opponents these teams drew, I think the SEC kept it pretty even. The one team, if you want to complain, there's one fan base that I would listen to, and that is the Alabama Crimson Tide. I mean, look at what they got here. Well, they got Georgia, South Carolina. They got them both at home, but then you go to LSU. I would imagine that'll be a night game in Death Valley, at Oklahoma, at Tennessee. Like, Alabama, man. They're going to run the gauntlet. Trey Kennedy, one of our producers here, he's an Alabama alum. We were talking before the show, and he's like, dude, I don't want to complain, but Alabama got the absolute just last card you want to draw when you're looking at the SEC's conference schedule. So, again, we'll see what these teams look like a year from now, but if there's one school that can complain, I think it's Alabama. Tennessee also drew, not the most favorable cards, but I think when you look at this, all that happened was you added either Oklahoma or Texas for most of these schools. Now, Georgia's going to play Bama, and Bama's going to play Georgia. Like, I understand that's a two-sided coin, but for the most part, you kept most of the rivalries intact, which we're all happy about, and you added a beautiful, I don't know if rivalry game is the right word to say. Texas A&M, Texas will be a rivalry game. You added another big-time brand they're going to play against. And so what I would say for the SEC faithful, even if you're not juiced about what you got ahead of you, there's a couple of things I would say with this. This is what you signed up for, right? Like, this is what you signed up for being in the SEC. This is what you get up on Saturday morning for and get excited about, is playing in the best conference in college football. Knowing each and every week you are going to earn your paycheck. That's how it is in the SEC. It's big boy football. And you love that. And there's been so much talk in SEC circles welcoming Texas and OU and saying they're in for a rude awakening. Like, I don't know if they understand what they're getting into. And whether that's true or not, Texas and OU fans, I put out a poll on my Twitter page last night, and I put out something on my Instagram. I just said, how do y'all feel about this? How are we feeling about the conference reveal tonight, the conference schedule reveal tonight? And a lot of y'all kind of said the same thing. It was, we're a little bit on edge to see who we do draw and see where we are going to go play. But the overwhelming sentiment that I got was bring it on. Most of y'all were saying we're excited. We've been waiting for this. We're waiting to prove ourselves. Everybody wants to talk about the Big 12's this, the Big 12's that, and it's always that asterisk talking about Texas and OU and what they do at the end of the year. There's not going to be any of that for any of these teams. This is going to be the most vicious regular season slate in all of college football, week in and week out. So if you're on any of these teams, if you're any of these fans, you're saying, all right, we're going to have a very legitimate product when we see that final record. There will be no questions about what we did in the regular season. You will know that we went through the gauntlet, went through the Hunger Games of college football to arrive wherever we arrive in December. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And as a fan of this sport that you and I love, last night felt like college football Christmas, man. Like, looking at all these games that we're going to have, Georgia, Bama. I mean, we got Oklahoma, LSU. We got Oklahoma, South Carolina. Texas, Florida. Like, the games that we're going to get here, just from a product. Think what you want about realignment. I've been on the front line saying I'm not a huge fan of realignment. I'm probably more in the traditionalist category. But all that is sort of by the wayside now. When we get these games, when it comes to Saturday morning, Man, I'll tell you what, that Reese Davis monologue when Georgia comes to Texas, and I imagine College Game Day will be there, that's going to hit different, man. That's going to be special. And I know tradition is tradition, and that's what I love about this game. But when they kick it off on Saturday, when it's the first possession and it's Texas against Georgia and they're finally playing the game, like, that's going to be a lot of fun. If we get Arch Manning versus Ryan Puglisi or Arch Manning versus Dylan Raiola, like, that's going to be incredible. And when that's happening, we're not going to be thinking about, man, I wish conference realignment went this way, that way, or the other way. So the sport itself, as long as Saturday gets here now, as long as they don't shave the week down to 6 days a week and pull Saturday out of the mix, we're going to be just fine as a sport. And this conference slate is going to be an absolute movie to watch week in and week out. So if you're a fan of the SEC, you win. If you're a fan of college football, you win. If you just love seeing good ball, you win. Now, it's not going to be an easy road, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.